Good afternoon, everybody. Goeiemiddag, Molo Ngakugula, and Botade. I'd like to welcome everybody from wherever you're watching. Thank you for joining us on this webinar. We're certainly pleased on behalf of Angola Cables to welcome our panel here today. The topic of our discussion is the future of ISPs in South Africa in a post-COVID economy. And I think we have a very knowledgeable panel joining us today. If I can start with some introductions. We have Alan Levine from Vanilla. We have Fanie Pretorius, who's the regional, Alan is the co-founder and CEO of Vanilla. Then we have Fanie Pretorius, Regional Director of Angola Cables. Percy McCaskill, who is part of Internet Solutions, Head of Products. And then we have, excuse me, Chris Burrell from Vox Telecom. So welcome, gentlemen. Very nice to have you here, and we do appreciate the fact that you've taken time out of your day. So the purpose of today is we'll just be discussing and identifying what has transpired in terms of the ISPs, what challenges have they faced. There will be an opportunity for everybody to ask questions, and those questions that we're not able to answer in the time frame, we will certainly make a plan to respond electronically to each of you. But we want to thank you all, for the audience as well, for taking their time. So if I can start, I think we're living in very challenging times. South Africa is fast approaching 100 days of lockdown, and that's something we've never seen in our history. With that, people have been forced to work remotely. The game or the landscape, the economic landscape has changed significantly, and everybody has to work remotely or largely with, bar some essential services. So that's put an increasing strain on the networks, but at the same time, I think it's shown up the critical role that ISPs have played in this digital environment that we live in today. So my first question to the panel would be, how has the COVID-19 pandemic impacted you in the last 3 months, you and your business? And perhaps it might be prudent to start with Fanie, just from an upstream wholesale perspective. How's a company like Angola Cables coped with the deluge, or should we say the sharp rise in data demand?
Hi, Rick. First of all, good day to you, our panelists, and everyone that's listening to this webinar today. I'm Fanie Pretorius, the Regional Director for Angola Cables in South Africa. So Angola Cables has established a company called Telecom, first of all in South Africa, to better and more efficiently deal with our clients in South Africa, and we are supported. I'm supported by a local team as well for that. So a very good question, Rick. I think we get that question quite a lot. So the reality for South Africa since the lockdown happened on the 26th of March this year has of course resulted in an unprecedented increase in demand for data and network capacity over the weeks to follow up until now. So we have, however, noted that significant increase in capacity utilization on our network already since December last year. So that is even before the pandemic hit our shores. So the COVID-19 pandemic, is very similar to any natural disaster that you might experience anywhere else in the world. It has its own nuances, of course, and we're dealing with some new things that we couldn't anticipate before. But fortunately for Angola Cables, we always have a 2 to 3 year planning horizon. And we also build redundancy and plan for unplanned events when we do our engineering and our network. And this also holds true for our data centers. Our data centers are beautifully geared, staff, looking after that, obviously looking tirelessly after getting things done quicker, and also to cope with the increased demand.
Thanks. Finally, that was quite comprehensive. Yeah, as I said, that increase in demand for data is probably hardest felt also by the ISP. So if I could move over to you, Percy, at Vox Telecom, what kind of challenges have you experienced, and how's it changed your outlook on the business?
Percy from Internet Solutions or Chris from Vox?
Sorry, Chris.
Okay, so thanks for having me on the panel. I think for us and how COVID's impacted us as a business, we're an essential services industry, and to be quite honest, I hear it every single day from my staff that they've never been busier, which is true from all of us, and I think that it's allowed us to change, mold our business into something else, to some of the ISPs in South Africa. But for some of us, it's enabled us to actually streamline our product set, change things, and adjust and go with it. Overall, we predominantly have always been geared to working in stressful circumstances and pressurized circumstances, and also to a point, working remotely has always been a part of our business. Things have changed slightly with that policy-wise, but the operation is still 1,000 miles an hour versus the usual 800 kilometers an hour. So as a business, we are busier than ever, and I think it's just allowed if you want to call it, the Maslow hierarchy of needs to change slightly for a lot of people, and especially as an ISP, we're very much right at the top there, along with doctors. Without the ISP today, we wouldn't be here talking right now.
Correct. Percy, your view?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I think similar to what the guys have been saying. What we've seen is definitely, obviously, a big increase in traffic on our network. At least, they're talking around 25% increase, especially in the internet space. So we've also been fortunate that we've made investments in the past that we haven't been strained in terms of our capacity. So we had enough headroom to be able to provide services ongoing to our clients, and with a lot of the bigger clients actually increasing their capacity, we've been able to provide it to them. I think a big impact for us on the negative end is the fact that obviously a lot of our clients are in industries where they in turn are obviously affected, and they can't operate as normal. So there's been a lot of requests and clients that basically want either payment relief or some sort of realignments of pricing, or downgrading, even churn in areas where they haven't been doing well. But on the positive end, I think we've also looked at products that we can take to market, new things that we've taken to market, that actually helps our clients who now want to have their staff working from home. And we've done a few products specifically in the with MWeb in our group as well. We've been fortunate to have that, so that we can take these services to market in the fiber to the home LTE space, as well as some more security-based products as well. But I think we're fortunate to be in this industry that at least we're relevant at these times, and that we still have good businesses going.
Percy, may I ask, you mentioned fiber to the home. Given the current situation with the lockdown, has there been a dramatic surge from your experience in the fiber to the home, and how have they been able to cope with it under the lockdown requirements to connect people?
I mean, we've definitely had, and it's taken some time to actually get it, but especially the bigger corporates are now looking at it, providing that to their staff at home, because now we all know that it's here to stay, right? And even post lockdown and all these things, we'll have staff more and more working from home. there's been a surge, and like I say, we utilize MWeb in a lot in this space, as well as obviously, especially on the mobility side of things. Our partnerships with MNOs have also helped us to be able to see that. But there in that space, I mean, we've seen a three times increase in usage as well. But yeah, it's been tough, and I think you can't operate as per normal, like fiber to the home. You can't necessarily do everything at the speed that you wanted to. But I guess people out there kind of understand that. But it's been slower than you would want to. But at least we started to getting some traction on that.
Thank you for that. And Adam, from your side.
Oh, thanks, Rick. So interesting to hear my colleagues. I think our business is a little bit different. We balance our network. We provide personalized service. We're a gigabit ISP, so our clients have got plenty of bandwidth, and we're generally holding their hands most of the time. Our business is about servicing the client to the end device. We've been putting in Wi-Fi networks for years and years, not only providing the main pipe. I think the first challenge was protecting the staff. As the person responsible for everybody, the first thing that I was concerned about is everybody's well-being. And yes, of course, we can all go and work from home. I mean, everybody basically packed up in that last week. I said start going home straight away as soon as it was announced. People basically just took their phones and maybe their screens. Most people didn't even need to take anything home. They had stuff at home. They just took their phone, and everybody worked from home. But it is a personal thing. You know what I mean? We work together. And the thing about splitting up is like that was the first concern. And then came in all these cancellations. We're a balanced business. I don't know how anyone can say there's more demand for bandwidth. There's no way there's more demand for bandwidth. Our entire economy shut down. When business shuts down, and 40% of our business is just shut down. Tourism, just dead. Hotels closing the door. Customers saying, we need to cancel. Us putting pressure on the upstream fiber operators saying, listen, 24-month contracts, just pause it at this time. Fiber network operators saying, no, we've got a legal document, you need to pay every month. We're telling the customer, no, we're going to help you survive. We're not going to charge you anything for bandwidth. And dealing with each customer individually, because some customers are just taking a chance. We know their business is okay and it's going to survive. Other customers, we need to vet. We know the beer house can't open up, and they've got expensive infrastructure. So it's about vetting each customer, holding each customer's hands, taking their executives and moving their home. And luckily we can take them off other ISPs and put them onto our fiber and then incorporate their bandwidth into their corporate accounts. So doing things like that, I don't consider them as new products. Maybe it's innovation, but it's just different ways of helping the customer.
I think you touch on a valid point there, because we're going to increasingly see people work from home. The data usage might not go up, but I think businesses, in order to operate, and if we look at the tourism sector, etc., they're going to have to look at various tools, whether it be online, digital, safaris, etc., which might require additional services. So how is the market going to adapt, and you guys as service providers, to that? Do you think there's any innovation that's coming into the market that you might be able to play a role there? Anybody want to field that question, or?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that question. Yes, as I mentioned, like moving the clients home and getting them onto VPNs is critical, and also assisting them to find different spaces and different ways of working, because last year everyone was trying to buy these and rent these huge spaces. Now all of a sudden they're trying to work out ways to understand which staff need to work in the office and which staff can work at home, and how to hot desk them and things like that. So for us, it's just about the intelligence rather than the product.
And from a customer interface, I can well understand that through this, the lockdown came on us quite suddenly, and it's been with us for a while, but a lot of people are, or should we say that the home users, etc., are not that internet savvy when it comes to their networks or setting up their home networks. Has that put enormous strain on your client services sides when helping the customers out, the technicals? Have you had to hire additional resources?
Admin. It's all admin, canceling and reordering and recanceling and re-enabling and changing the billing. And it's mostly a huge, the rest of the company works very efficiently, but there's huge admin load.
Is that the same case with the business operators and other ISPs?
From a Vox Telecom standpoint, it's pretty much everything that Alan's spoken about. I mean, we're seeing a lot of businesses who are battling and asking for payment holidays. However, depending on whether it's a B2B or B2C based company, I mean, that company or that business is still got to receive its funds from its own customers. So at the end of the day, the payment holidays actually don't really help anyone. So inadvertently, we are seeing a massive amount of business cancellations coming through. And no matter what we try and do to try and save those customers, offer them alternate solutions, at the end of the day, they just don't have a choice. And they are in dire straits. And they literally basically just are canceling services. That's the one aspect of what we are seeing as an ISP. And these are customers we know very, very well. And we're not going to let them just go under. So at the end of the day, we'll do whatever we can, but we've been trying this for a long time and we're just not winning there. And the customer is not winning. And it's actually sad. It's very disappointing.
Perhaps just a quick comment, Rick. What I found surely personally and in the business that we are in is that crisis always inevitably creates innovation.
Yes.
Because if you find yourself in difficult circumstances, South Africa's situation was perhaps a bit unique compared to the rest of the world because we went into a very hard lockdown, whereas other countries like Spain perhaps late realized, well, okay, we need to go into lockdown, but it was already, at the peak of the outbreak. So by us going into a lockdown earlier, perhaps it gave people a chance to reflect, on the things that are really important. We also have to bear in mind that our own economy wasn't really doing very well towards the end of December last year. So yes, we can perhaps blame a lot on the pandemic, but I also believe that we inevitably economically we're heading for more difficult times this year. So perhaps people are focusing the available funds on something different. I mean, we couldn't go to cinemas, we couldn't socialize. South Africans are notoriously known for being socializing people. We visit with family, friends almost every weekend. We have the weather to allow for that. That all of a sudden being taken away, immediately people started looking for ways to fill that gap. And I think, the uptake of digital entertainment was one of the big causes for the demand in data that we see. Perhaps not as much, because one of the things that I was thinking about is that we always had enterprise and we had consumer on the one side. But perhaps we created a new category called home enterprise. People are thinking like we've heard to optimize their cost. Perhaps they won't be renting as big business spaces anymore, and have learned perhaps we could do business from home, which could also then maybe not right away, but in time, make business people think differently about operating their businesses. Perhaps the home enterprise is on the rise.
So, yeah, Percy, if I can ask you, I mean, that presents opportunity, obviously. I think we're going into tough economic times, so companies like yours, international businesses, and those operating internationally are going to have to think differently. Here there's going to be continually, from a B2C perspective, a squeeze on margins. So we're going to have to look for other profit opportunity or revenue generating opportunities. Can you give us an indication of what is the mood in the industry going forward? in terms of new innovations and how to seek out new pricing or revenue models?
Yeah, I mean, I think Fanie's just talk about it now. You look at that. Some of your clients are going to be looking to save money in certain areas, and be that in in real estate or rentals or whatever, and the hopefully that they would then use that money for connectivity, because they're going to need better connectivity, especially like you say, when people are working from home. So there's definitely there's definitely a focus on that. I think obviously there's other things you've got to look at as well, and products like the collaborations. Everyone's using Teams or any form of that. So you've got to look at monetizing those as well. And and some of the bigger clients are going to be looking at providing their people a good infrastructure even at the home, so that they would have redundancy and with this load shedding and things like that they'll still have continuous power. So there's various things that you can throw into the mix. And as I say, also I think security is a big part of it. So you've got to look at ways of bringing that in. And I think it's going to be important also that for anyone to survive, especially some of the smaller ISPs, you also got to deal with clients who then ultimately have a sustainable business. So you're going to have to be careful, also just to also be able to, as we say that you've got to still get cash from your clients. So you've got to deal with clients who are sustainable as well, and it's not always going to be easy to know that. But I think you're going to have to be careful in the way we do business as well.
Yeah, thanks. Percy, you mentioned, and a topic that I did want to discuss was the whole issue of security. We know that through this lockdown period, phishing attacks have been on the rise. Cyber attacks have been on the rise for the last couple of years, but they've spiked quite considerably now during COVID. What are ISPs doing in terms of, and the likes of Angola Cable, in terms of providing that added security and peace of mind to the end user? But maybe if I can start with you there, Fanie, from a network perspective.
Yeah, perhaps the important thing that Percy did touch on, I think we all know with the hard lockdown, people were sent home, they took their devices and remotely connected to their intranet infrastructure, to access corporate information. And that in itself, I think, from an IT cybersecurity perspective, posed many challenges. I mean, I think perhaps 60 to 70% of your workforce coming into the office connected and access secure information via their desktop PCs in the building. All of a sudden, you have them leaving, and most of their devices not properly set up, with security features in place to connect securely to your network. That was at least something that we have considered, because we are a cyber savvy company ourselves. Because I mean, this is probably the first year that I've not been on the road for probably 100 days. And I know when we travel overseas or we travel away from the office that, our security is a main concern. Being in the network business, our main concern, considering our customers, is network threats. And one of the main ones being DDoS. I think cyber criminals have taken opportunity during these times, not having I'm not saying that, not having much to do. They always don't have much to do, but to attack networks. That was one of our key focus areas. And we actually have a suite of products, dedicated products that we make available for our customers to take up as value-added services to that extent. But other than that, we do all the basic type of DDoS, not scrubbing, but perhaps something like black holing, because we have nodes on the edge of our network where we could monitor potential threats and discard them at that stage. But these guys come up with innovative things every once in a while. You'll see they're hacking the Pentagon, or they're hacking very secure facilities, which we thought were impenetrable. So I think ultimately the solution is to get the experts in the industry known standard type DDoS protection, which again we offer as add-ons to our clients to protect against that.
Thanks. And then from your side, is that a sort of an add-on service that you also provide your customers?
Look, we've been doing this for our customers and for ourselves for a long time. There's nothing special about COVID. Like Fanie said, he travels around the world, and we're always helping our customers to be able to work remotely, setting up VPNs. I mean, many businesses, we moved their kit from their data centers into our data centers and things like that. But this is just a regular service that we provide. But based on the previous question and this question, I'd like to propose to the other speakers here. I think that what this has done for the internet is that it has raised our image. I'm on site, I go into houses, we do Wi-Fi enablements. We don't only look at the pipe going in, but we look at the local distribution. I know voice and internet solutions also do. But, you've got to get the pipe in, and then distribute it around. So we're not that different to the electrician or the plumber. But when I get to a building, the electrician and the plumber were built into the plans. In every room, there's at least 50 cables for electricity, whether it's light fittings or switches or plugs or alarm. There's so much infrastructure when it comes to electricity. Plumbing, it's all totally planned out up front. The pipes that are into the building are the very first. But we think we're so important. We have to get fancy degrees, we scientists and all this. But in reality, it goes electrician, plumber, internet guy. We're the afterthought. We have to make the internet work with no wires. We don't get invited in until everything's sealed up. And now we have to make the internet work everywhere. We come into the building, it's an old building, and everything is and we're not allowed to touch anything. You know what I mean? But what I propose is that now we're not as important as the electricians, but we may be more important than the plumbers. They might think of us before the plumbers.
I like that analogy. And, things are moving so fast. COVID has just brought it into sharp focus. We're living in a futuristic society. Yes, we keep on complaining about this and that, etc. But people want internet. They want access to the internet. They want to be able to stream. They want to be able to do their business remotely. And they want to be able to do that as a plug-and-play option. And I think you're right, Anne, and I think for too long it's been quite complex to do that. Although service providers, I think, are making it easier for the customer. I just think that there might also be opportunities to make it easier for business as well to operate their businesses remotely and securely. And I think that's the era that we're going into. It'll be interesting to see how long it will take for us to get out of this lockdown, for how long it'll take the world to get out of the lockdown. The thing to me is that we're also cut off internationally from traveling. So service providers and network providers will play a very critical role in the next couple of months and going into the next year or so. And I think it's a time to really redefine the offering and what you can provide. And just on that score, we talked a little about payment relief, etc. Were there any other unique services that you extended it to your customers, or provided them with extra data, for example, or extra bandwidth? Perhaps that question to you, Chris.
So absolutely. So we did give some additional capacity to our customers, as long as that may last. And what we would tend to have seen is that is still rolling to date, especially from a consumer point of view. So that amount of capacity we go to those customers is sufficient and has gotten them by and is still rolling over. I think just getting back to what you were saying earlier, I mean, I think COVID has given the ISPs in general a chance to quickly adapt and recognize new revenue streams potentially, change their product stacks, accommodate their customers in different ways around their new needs and requirements, and realization that people do need to move things to the cloud. That's been a long-term thing. And the final thing, which is I think it's been stated around for the past couple of months, is around that the internet has finally been used for what its intended purpose was. And I think that's a key thing. And Alan was spot on there, and I actually liked his analogy around the plumber and the electrician, that we are right there at the top. And without us, you don't have TV. I mean, let's be frank. I mean, communication is changing dramatically, year on year. And without the internet, your house is actually not functional to some degree. If you're a fully automated house, you have no TV, you have no radio, you have no communication, no email. You have literally, your hands have been cut off, if that internet goes down, especially in my household. My kids are the first ones to come running to me saying, why can't I watch TV? Why is the internet down? Why is it so slow? I'm going, get off your games, get off the TV, get off your iPads. And that's just generally what everyone's going to start seeing going forward. So we are a critical part of the infrastructure and the cogs in the bigger picture. Alan's comments there were very, very, very relevant.
I think to an extent, we've had to suffer before with the rolling blackouts, that's impacted connectivity, and people have realized that. And we're starting to realize how vital it is in our lives. And Percy, from your side, what else can we do to ensure that more people can become connected more affordably or have greater access to services from a digital perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think we will see. We will have to look at expanding services. I think there's a couple of things we see. Our guys are coming into 5G, and now that's going to be expanding, and your LTE services going across, covering bigger parts of the country. So eventually I think we should be able to see that, but I mean it's all about affordability as well. At the end of the day, I mean not everyone can afford it, especially in these times. So there's going to have to be as the bigger guys like the MNOs come in, the pricing will have to be to such an extent that people can afford it.
Just also on that. I think that Fanie touched on it earlier. The COVID pandemic is going to leave us with a dreadful economic legacy, I think, whichever way we look at it. We see now with people losing their jobs, etc. It's going to be tough times. Businesses are going to have to look at how they operate, look at their costs and expenses. What do you think about the smaller ISPs versus the bigger ISPs? Are we going to see a bit more activity in the marketplace and sort of, some of the bigger ISPs taking over the smaller ISPs that can't exist? Or do you think there's niches for each of the players? And perhaps maybe, Alan, you've got a view on that.
I'm still thinking about the previous comments. I'm sorry. Affordability is a very soft spot for me. And I dedicate 20% of my time to the Internet Society and non-profit activities in trying to build the Internet Society of South Africa. And I've been working on affordability and trying to make the Internet accessible for more than 50% of our country for 20 years. And it's not yet been successful. And there aren't any answers
some of the challenges?
There aren't any answers around this table, and we're not even touching on that. In fact, the points that were made by my colleagues, I'm surprised, because we certainly have had to discount on the bandwidth side a lot. And on the bandwidth side, there's very fierce competition. I don't know how AfriHost manages to survive on 80 Rand a customer on things like margins like that, 50 Rand a customer. because the fiber network operators, if you look at Vumatel, Octatel, Frogfoot, I don't know what you have anywhere in your suburb, you know, these small operators, a fiber network operator, if they've got a whole suburb, if they've invested 5 million rand in fibering up a suburb, are they small fiber network operators? Yes, they're tiny, but they've still invested 15 million rand. I don't know if I've got that much fiber under the ground. I'm mainly providing services over the fiber. My investments in the global network. So there's all different operators in this space, but the majority of them have taken this opportunity in this time to increase the prices. I've seen increased prices from the fiber network operators and very little flexibility with regards to, you know, pausing. No, it's a cancellation and it's a reactivation. There's no such thing as pausing. So, you know, I mean, that's the previous point. But we can go on about that. We're not talking about affordability here. It is getting more expensive. People think it's more important, and we think we're very important, so let's make it more expensive.
So do you think there's scope for discussion, though, that there needs to be a better interaction between ISPs and the service providers, you know, even the network providers like Angola Cables, etc., in order to try and come up with a solution that's going to work?
Well, let's call Angola Cables a global carrier. They're in a fiercely competitive environment.
Yeah.
It's slightly different to the local fiber network operators that are building fiber in the suburb.
So I think just touching on your point, you know, when you said about connectivity and connecting those that aren't not connected at the moment, do you think the building of data centers and the expansion of cloud networks, Chris, and I want to put that question to you, is that part of the solution? And do you think we're going to see the investment that's going to be required? Firstly, here, I think here in South Africa, there's a number of builds taking place, and we've advanced quite quickly. That's not necessarily the case in the rest of Africa. There is talk, but given the economic situation, do you think that's going to happen at the pace that we need it to happen?
Sorry, I missed the first part of your question.
Just in terms of connectivity for those that are disconnected, do you think that neutral data centers, etc., are going to give people the better opportunity to access cloud, etc., on a wider geography?
I think that's a very small part of, and exactly on Alan's point again, and I'm tending to lean a lot with what Alan's saying. I mean, a lot of the financial strain is not necessarily on entirely on just the peering component and getting the traffic across to peers. A lot of it is the last mile services, the IRUs that are in place. Those sort of things are the set costs, right? And as a wholesaler, you got to make that money back somehow. And playing with those small margins is very confusing. And again, I agree with Alan as to how you can go so low. Yes, you may be getting the numbers from the amount of customers that you've got and blanketing the market. But at the end of the day, you've got to make a profit to be sustainable and to move yourself forward. So I don't agree with that, as well. And at the end of the day, we want to get this, these services out to as many people as possible at the right price that is tangible. And if it's not tangible, your business is not really a business. You're just out there to smoke everyone else and just take over, everything and be this conglomerate, if you can put it that way. But at the end of the day, internet should be for everyone. I agree with that. And if it's at the palatable price, then that's okay. I agree with that. But if you are going in there with some massively, overpriced product at this point in time, I think that's wrong. So yeah, it's a difficult one to argue because I'm on both sides of the fence here, as a consumer as well as a supplier. But I think that these small ISPs, if you want to call them small, medium, large, whatever they may be, are going to play a massive pivotal part moving forward in this industry. Businesses aren't businesses like they used to be. They're now businesses in your home. And you need someone to service those homes. And the enterprise-based internal IT department is not that person to service that home environment because it's not just used for the business. Everything in that house is not managed and owned by the business. So, and we've seen that in our own business as well. And I'm speaking from experience. Our entire staff, is working from home. And at the end of the day, the internal IT department is so used to managing stuff that is within their control, within the boundaries of their buildings, you know, and the assets that belong to them. Now they're dealing with Johnny, who can't make a video conference call because Kippy is now playing a video Call of Duty on the sideline here, which is interrupting his video conference call. So these are the real world things that we're going to have to start dealing with. And I think that the small ISP or the smaller ISP is going to play a fundamental role in supporting those large businesses in the new age. Not saying that they're going to be paid by them, they'll be paid by the user and recouped by the employee. But at the end of the day, if someone needs to fix your Wi-Fi at home, it's not necessarily bought and owned and managed by the company. You've bought that yourself, and you are basically, you know, taking some expenses back from the company to some degree, which is paying for that. But the company is not supporting it. You yourself are supporting that, and you need to go find an IT support person and an ISP to support doing that. So I have a lot of opinions on how this market's going to go, and how our focus has changed slightly on how we think and how we see things going forward. But I think we just need to allow the ISPs to be the enabler to enable your employees to get into your business or get to your cloud facilities. And if you have to pay 5 third parties to do that, that's your new business.
Thank you. That was very insightful. Percy, do you have anything to add to that going forward?
No. I mean, I agree with the guys. I mean, I think you know, there's challenges, there's opportunities. You know, we'll see that coming, and then as we've already mentioned, you know, there's a lot of good things that we can you know, we can try and do it, but it's going to be harder as well. You know, going forward. And yeah, I mean, it's also important to look at the realities. You know, they're all also in a tough space at the moment, so we've got to support them.
So without dwelling on the negative, I mentioned earlier that ISPs and other service providers are really playing a crucial role at this time. What are the big opportunities do you see for yourselves going forward? You know, I think there's many ways that we can help both enterprise and the consumer. And as Alan puts it, you know, we need to look forward with a degree of optimism. We will get through this, and it'll certainly bring out the importance of the role played by ISPs. Anybody have think what are some of the other upsides that will be coming out of what has been a rather depressing period?
Perhaps, Rick, I can just add a comment. So obviously we find ourselves in a difficult situation. I mean, through history, it's proven that, you know, we get through it. At some point in time, you know, it's almost like a reset, a rethink, and then, you know, we make do with the new reality that we are living in. I think one of the key things that this pandemic has brought along, perhaps, is the speeding up of the digitalization of our lives. Now, I guess Africa versus the rest of the world and South Africa versus Africa are different realities. And one of the things that has always been close to my heart was, you know, the underserved areas in South Africa. Now, saying that we're going to connect everyone with fiber, there's been a drive to try and do that within the next couple of years, I think is far-fetched. And I think, as Christopher also said earlier, the business that we do needs to be sustainable. Okay, now, whether that broadband connection is going to come through a fiber connection, and as Alan mentioned, you know, is it something that's pre-installed in the building or not? When we make a broadband connection, whether it's with radio, with LTE, or with fiber, and we are able to serve somebody through that, I think that's already a win. And I just know that the time that we are finding ourselves in is uncertain. Nobody has a crystal ball. We don't know where we'll be, you know, even in the next 2 years. I heard somebody ask the question on one of these COVID webinars, where do you see us in the next 5 years? And the guy basically said he doesn't even have a 5-year horizon anymore. He is only considering perhaps the short term, which is the next year, and perhaps 2 years in the future. But I believe in the ability of us as humans to adapt to this, and as service providers to, being South African, we tend to try and look out, for the guys around us and that are maybe not as privileged, and also find a suitable solution going forward. It might be an interim one. We might only see the type of solution that we'd like to see within the next 2 years or so. But I'm convinced that this has just pushed us along to try and find better solutions. We're talking about pricing, we're talking about technology and so on. There are many factors that are impacting on that. I mean, if a guy doesn't have money to pay for a fiber connection, and he has sufficient money to pay for a cell phone connection with a bit of data, then that's it. That is what he will go for, and he'll make do with that. But I'm surely hopeful that through this, there's some acceleration that will take place in the digital space, because we've realized and we've learned that this is something that is key and important as electricity and water in our country, and maybe treat it differently and look at it differently.
Can I ask, from a service provider perspective, is there any move? You mentioned, Alan, earlier with the internet group. Is industry talking together about the situation we're in now, some of the challenge that we're facing in connecting the unconnected, what we're going to do and how to deliver or work closer together as industries and not just as individual businesses? Is that happening?
Yeah, I'd really like to address this, and I'd like to take off my vanilla hat to address this, because I really don't think this is an appropriate forum to talk about servicing the underserviced. Fanie, especially from an Angola cables perspective, from a vanilla perspective, we know that national haul is the least competitive fiber space. So if you're talking about servicing the underserviced, it means about building fiber in South Africa, not undersea cables. So if you want to talk about the underserviced, you have to be able to put money where your mouth is. We're talking about a lot of money to build national fiber hauls. We don't have much national fiber, lots of global fibers. But we really have a problem with our national. And that means connecting the main cities. We're not talking about connecting the underserviced areas. Those are totally off the main fiber routes. And it's not about the fiber to the end customer. It's just about getting fiber to the community, to the millions of people that don't have anywhere near access to the internet. So please, we know that there's fiber involved to get to the underserviced areas, and I don't think this is the space to talk about it. What I can say in this space, as a licensed telecommunications provider, we are all paying a percentage of our revenue, not our profit. We're paying a percentage of our revenue into a fund that gets hundreds of billions of rands. It's called the Universal Service Fund. Okay, and that basically goes into government's pockets. That money we are paying towards building the infrastructure for the underserviced. Now, fixing that in government or fixing that ourselves, that's a whole nother discussion, but that's not where we're at right now. Where we're at right now isn't even looking at opportunities. I also feel right now we're looking at servicing our customers because we're in a pandemic. We're in a state of emergency. To talk about planning products, also, I feel uncomfortable about. We're here to service our customers until things hopefully come back to as normal as they possibly can. It's a state of emergency. I think it's inappropriate to talk about plans for the underserviced and talking about creating new products. It's about serving our customers and helping to restart our economy and helping to get things moving and making sure that we're doing the new installs and that we're doing the moves and to getting the customers up and running at home and moving them around. I really think that's where we're at.
Alan, I think those are very valid comments. And, you know, this country, as we know, has got a lot of requirements that need a lot of funding, and we've got very little money to do it, you know, from infrastructure to the rest. So if we go back to the question of, you know, being at the, available to the customer, from an ISP perspective and in your businesses, have you needed to acquire additional resources at this time, change your systems just to manage the demand and the inflow from customers? Perhaps, Christopher, you want to answer that question? You touched on it earlier.
Probably twofold. So we service a vast array of different pieces of the business, as well as consumer, SME, etc. So our network is pretty balanced, and the traffic has grown not astronomically but substantially, but it's merely shifted from one to the other. We're gonna get to a point, and we're seeing it right now, where our business-based graphs are starting to pick up again, not to the levels that they were at. But they are moving upwards, and the change and the differences between that traffic where it used to be and where it is now has just shifted onto the FTTH side of the business. So the traffic growth is just the nature and the habit of what's happening right now. Kids aren't at school, behavior is very different. Traffic levels are very different based on that as one point. So we have seen that type of growth, but when things go back to whatever normal actually is, where kids are going back to school and we are working from home, not in an office park, those levels pretty much are going to start to taper off and get back to some normality, if you can put it that way. So we were lucky because we service those sides of the business, and we had previously done some infrastructure upgrades. So this is all luck. We could have been caught with our pants down completely. And to a point that when you get to those levels, we do expand our infrastructure, and that's just the way that our business operates, and most of the other ISPs operate. We don't procure chunks and chunks of traffic of capacity and just leave it there lying doing nothing. We use the capacity that we've got. So we are seeing some abnormality within traffic patterns right now, especially on our network, larger volumes of traffic. But I see that tapering off and going back to some normality, if you want to use that word, whatever that means.
Chris, thanks for that. Percy, you also mentioned that you guys had also put in some addressed capacity and put in the necessary for that. Do you also see the sudden rise in demand going back to some sort of level of normality, or will we always see an uptick now that people have become more familiar with working with tools such as these or streaming activities?
Yeah, I mean, I think there probably will be, as Chris mentions, some sort of normalizing, over time. That is, we can all kind of just, we're not sure what's going to happen, I guess, but I think that we will see that, and again, it might be shifts and moves into different aspects of the network. Like I say, I mean, we see uptake on more the mobility side of things, or 3G and LTE now. It could move back to other areas of the network. But yeah, I don't think, I mean, and especially what we've seen, it's not been as massive as that we can't deal with it, or even from a support and a people perspective, like that you mentioned, we haven't had to like hire in new people, to deal with it. So yeah, I mean, in a way, it's kind of shifts and moves in our network. Yeah.
I think just on that score, I would like to say again the valuable role that the ISPs have played at this time. I think we'll be all out at sea if we didn't have connectivity. It would be pretty difficult to do anything. But finally, from your side, obviously international traffic moving data from continent to continent, that's also picked up over this time. Have you seen any marked changes in traffic routings?
Well, perhaps also, I mean, just commenting on Alan's comment earlier, yes, we are an international provider, and we are a global provider, but we play a very important role in South Africa in that we ensure redundancy. If you remember earlier this year, we had, was it 2 submarine cables going down, and fortunately Angola Cables Network, the SACS network, was able to divert that failure, and that, I think, helped South Africa a lot in that respect. Now, the internet, by definition, is just a connection of networks to networks. If you would only consider the local network in South Africa without the international part, that would not be the internet. That would be like a South Africa intranet, basically. So these international, from a global perspective, plays a big role because they do fail, and they do, because they're exposed to the environment. They're lying on the seabed. Anything that happens there is beyond your control, pretty much like this pandemic that we are in. And the redundancy that you've built in would, you know, save your internet and your connections. So perhaps seeing, you know, where the increase was is definitely servers, caching servers that could not be reached. So in many cases where servers were reached to get cached information, they couldn't be reached. They had to be directly accessed in the US. So we saw a tremendous ramp up in you know, traffic to the United States on our networks. And during the failures we had, obviously there was a huge reroute of traffic by the United States back to Europe. But surely, I mean, during this time, I think that was the real question. What have we seen? I think businesses are also considering different opportunities. Like I said earlier, this pandemic has cause for innovation. So you will find people want to communicate. They all of a sudden, I've heard from my daughter, there's lots of kids now all of a sudden looking at K-pop videos, which wasn't the case before. Because, you know, some kid picked up on this on the internet during this lockdown, and it was spread around social media. And I also understood recently there was some conventions that were shut down in the US because these fans then went on online to block certain events and so on. So it's an interesting phenomenon, you know, people sitting, not having the capability to go out, realizing, well, there's another world, the digital world, and completely got involved in that perhaps too much. I also had to caution my own children against that at times, you know, just shut the internet down so that we don't, you know, get involved in that too much. But surely, I mean, we've seen a huge increase in international traffic coming from South Africa and around our neighboring countries as well.
Mm. Gentlemen, time is running away from us, so perhaps, and to conclude, I'd like to go around the table and ask each of you, in the coming months, what do you think is A, our challenge, and B, what is the opportunity that you see to reposition the ISPs and to make sure that we have sustainable businesses going forward? So, Chris, if I can start with you.
I think, again, servicing our customers is important. Moving with the shift that we've seen, adjusting our product stacks, giving the customers what they actually need now versus what they used to need. And I think we've got a whole other world that's also running parallel to what we're dealing with right now. There's a lot of new policies which have come into play, especially with what our business is going through, like Papaya, as well as, you know, ISO 27000 and those sort of standards, which now have slightly had to change themselves. So we're doing a lot of back-end stuff there, and also, you know, with things like that coming into play, they were not designed for work at home sort of scenarios. So you're dealing with a lot of work stuff, and your paperless desk that you used to have to abide by at your office is not so much being abided to in your home. So things like that, as well as cybersecurity attacks, we have seen that as well on a massive rise, and it's a new form of attack. It's not the business attack, it's your endpoint. So there's a lot of new things which can be exciting to some people and daunting to others that we're going to have to keep an eye out for.
Thank you so much. Percy?
Yeah, I mean, in short, and we've touched on it, but I think opportunities definitely. Looking at ways of servicing our customers and packaging things in a way that they can use it. And I do think there's going to be in our industry more spend that potentially comes towards us as these clients cut down on travel and cut down on other discretionary and rent and things, and looking for ways of connecting. So that's definitely a huge opportunity for us in this industry, and looking for the right ways of servicing those customers. And but I think also challenges are, again, clients that do find it tough to survive in these times. And also, I think the other challenge, to be honest, is also just strain on the ISP in terms of servicing supporting customers in a way now that might be different to before. Like I also mentioned, you might need people or more people to support customers, or support more lines, or support more vast dispersed area, or where your customers are sitting. So that's also going to be potentially a bit of a challenge going forward.
Thank you. Alan?
Thanks. Yeah, I think it's all about people right now. As I said, we feel that there's a state of emergency, that there's economic disaster going on all around us. We want to try and save as much as we can of our society, of our economy, of all the small businesses, of all our customers. We're hiring, we're very busy. We do see a lot of customers coming to us wanting personal service, recognizing our personal service. So we're carrying on in that way, and I'm hopeful that the beer house is going to be back. That Randolph's going to come back from Europe and he's going to open up the beer house again. You know what I mean? And the Airbnbs and everything. Maybe more of us will work from home, but until then, we just got to try and help the people, help our staff to keep safe. I'm very worried that anyone in our team gets sick. Very worried. And I work hard at trying to keep everybody safe. And nobody can use public transport. And everybody must be wearing masks and everyone must social distance. You know what I mean? So that's my main concern right now.
And I think, Fanie, just before I pass over to you for some closing words, you're right there. And I think that the internet plays such a valuable role in communicating, educating, and providing knowledge, whether they do that through an ISP in terms of the exchange of data, or through a network operator, or through a carrier. You guys are providing the service that gets information and knowledge to people out there. And this time, it plays such a valuable part in terms of keeping the social distancing, sanitizing, and making sure that we all get through this together. But before I close, Fanie, your final impressions?
Thanks, Rick. I reiterate the sentiments that all the previous speakers have given. We can speak about business, we can speak about lots of things, but at the end of the day, it's all about people, right? We want to give them something which has now become essential, being the internet, maybe not thought of as much as it has been now, because we're facing this new reality. I mean, at the same time, we also trying to keep our staff safe in South Africa and Angola and Brazil. We practice social distancing, and we work remotely where possible, except for the operational staff that needs to be on site at the cable stations and so on. But the necessary precautions are being taken there. And perhaps, one of the key things that's also close to my heart is that one of the visions of our CEO, Antonio, is also to help where we can. So we're not, as much as we would like to say we have products to sell, I think what we've mostly done over the past couple of months is sell solutions. Not one company's reality is the same. So we tend to look at them individually and not measure them against a fixed sheet of products. So if somebody would come to us and need us to help, we have an extensive network of other providers and contacts that we reach out to in many cases to try and help. For example, where areas are not properly connected and we need to get a connection in, we have the ability to phone some of our partners and ask them what's going on and put some pressure on to get things happening. That's in the South African context. So, but thank you very much for the panelists, for the speakers that were on today. I'm sure this is not the end of the discussion. This is perhaps only the kick-off. And I hope that I'll hear from you guys and that we can work, on getting this going and working through this new reality that we find ourselves in. That's what Angola Cables and Telcables in South Africa is all about. So we want to try and help.
And as they say, you never waste a good crisis. But I think it's up to all of us to play our role and to offer a contribution. And as Fanie says, offer the solutions that we're going to need to go forward together and get past this and get on to greater things. I think that the future holds a lot for everybody. But to each one of you, Percy, to you, Christopher, to you, and to you, Alan, and Fanie, really thank you so much for your time. We sincerely appreciate your insights, and we look forward to the opportunity to talk again. And may I wish you all and your work colleagues to be safe and best of the business going forward. Let's be strong and keep the faith. So thank you for your time. And just to those viewers that are listening, the recording will be available. And if you have any additional questions, please just share that with us. I will be happy to direct it to either of our panelists today. We'll make sure that we can get back to you. But thank you one and all for joining us today. And may I wish you all a good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Cheers.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Alan. Much appreciated.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Percy.
All right, thanks.
Thanks.